good.
That's nice.
I'm just trying out if I'm, yeah, some videos, but yeah, how they can be seen, but. Okay, no, I know how the PowerPoint works, but I don't know how the videos how I can get the videos. Yes. Oh, I see, escape, that's good. Oh, one thing, I forgot something. Sorry, I forgot 2 videos. Yeah, but people are not, yes.
Il me semble que...
It's working, okay. Gosh, I forgot 2 videos. Sorry. Can I just get out?
Yeah.
Just simply. Hello. Please join us here closer, because I mean I would like to do this very interactively. So if you want, just come closer. So shall we start, maybe? Yes. Am I the chair of my own? That's great. Hello, everybody, and thanks very much for coming to this workshop today. So, to those who were at my talk on Wednesday, for those, so this is a sort of continuation of what I have been talking about then, and I would like to do this interactively. So please feel to answer my questions. Be active. So this is a workshop after all, and I would like to invite you, just if you want, you can sit closer. I mean, please feel free to come closer. There will be our assistant here who will give you the microphone for answers. And a warm welcome to all in Montreal. I can't see you, but anyway, I hope you're there. Thanks for being with us. This is our motto for today. It's a It's from a video recorded excerpt from a research of one of my very dear colleagues from the RCM, Tanya Lisbeth, who interviewed a 10-year-old girl studying a piano piece. I mean, it's very sad, isn't it? And I would like to ask, I would like to start actually with a, so this is the title and my affiliation. And I would like to start about, with two other children, a 9-year-old, I mean, two 9-year-old, 10-year-old boys, Magnus and Ilan. I will show you an excerpt from Liszt's La leggerezza, a concertitude, performed by these two children. I mean, just the first minute of it. And I will ask for your opinions about it, about the two performances. So, the first is Magnus. And the second little boy is Ilan, so about the same age. Oh my God, I hope I will find the folders. Yes. So that was the same excerpt. May I just ask you first about your, general opinion about the two children. Who would prefer listening to the entire video? I won't do that, no problem. So, of the first child. So who would prefer the first child? Who would like to? Okay. What about the second? Please raise your hand. Wow. What about you? What do you think? Second, right? Oh, okay. We have 100% agreement. Wow. That's very interesting. So, so there is something about it. Okay. Sorry, I want just to switch to my slides. Yes, and you have. So here they are. So, in order to grasp the difference between two performances, we can do a structural level description. I already told about this sort of thing on Wednesday, which is about the differences in tempo and performance features, such as tempo and so on. You can see them there. However, it's much more interesting to uncover what is going on in their heads while performing. By the way, may I ask you, how would you describe the difference between the two little boys, either on the structural level or on the cognitive level? What was the difference? You clearly prefer the second one. What was the difference? No, of course not. No. I found them randomly on YouTube. YouTube is full of children like that performing Liszt's La leggerezza, in fact. Yes, that's right.
It seems to me that the basic thing is commitment.
Okay, a commitment.
And the second boy, gave a very good account of himself. I'm always worried about listening to children playing music that they're too young to understand.
Yes, of course.
But he had a much more rounded view of what the piece was about. The first boy actually looked frankly bored at one moment, didn't he?
Actually, I have to tell you that I like very much your answer. I mean, what you say, because you're talking about understanding and meaning or something like that. Yes. Okay, so you say that that the second boy is sort of understanding what he's playing.
Rather than just obeying the instructions.
Absolutely, yeah. Rather than just following instructions of his teacher, and rather than just knowing what button to push after each other. Yes, something like that on that terrible instrument. Yes, Anna Rita said that, and okay, yes. We shall return to this in a moment.
So they are children, so for me it's difficult to say if it is who was better or not, or what. But so there are several
yes.
stuff that you can say. But what I thought is that they had two different teachers. So when the second child started to play one with this particular gesture of the
we have to return to this as well. That's very important. At the beginning.
I imagine his or her teacher, his teacher, doing the same gesture. So I think that most of the difference that we saw depend on the teachers.
Okay, of course that can be the case. Thank you very much for this. First of all, sorry, I'll get back to you in a moment. So what do you think about this gesture? Do you remember how the second child started the piece? There was a very clear gesture of what? What does it say about that gesture? What sort of function does it have? What do you think? Shall I recall? I mean, if you want, I can. Yeah, what is the function of that gesture? Instead of just playing da-da-da-da-da-da, he did something like, sorry? Oh, there was an upbeat, yes. And what is an upbeat? An upbeat is, it's to set the tempo. It sets the tempo, of course. It sets the tempo and sets many other things as well, of course. So the second child clearly was sort of prefiguring, was anticipating in advance what he will play. Whereas the first one, I mean, there must have been some sort of anticipation in the first child as well. However, it was not clear. It was not as sort of expressed, or not as clear cut. Yes.
No, it was exactly on the line of the other comment.
I can't hear you.
My idea was, my feeling was that the second child is taking his temporality, his own temporality in playing than the first one.
Right, so the second child is taking his own temporality. It means that you seem to imply that he has something in his mind and he tries, I mean, in advance about the piece and about the timings, the micro timing, for example, and this is what he wants to really, achieve, to produce while performing. Yes, I agree with you all. Actually, I must agree with you all. And to return to what you said about the meaning of the thing, I mean, I would argue for this. What happens in the mind of a performer when he or she represents the musical meaning, I was already talking about this on Wednesday, sorry for, yes, is that these are the sorts of things the performer represents in his or her mind in the act of performance. And that makes the performance more expressive and more individual. Of course, gestures or the direct expression of emotions and feelings, or the feeling of the tonality, the feeling of tonal moments, the feeling of a dissonance, or the feeling of a consonance, of tonal stability, for example, in the act of performance, or the feeling of metricality, for example, the feeling of the fact that I am at the moment performing at the 6th bar of an 8-bar period, and I'm right at the moment at the 2nd beat of that 6th bar of the 8-bar phrase in, let's say, 3/4. That's a very clear-cut feeling, actually, and these sorts of feeling make up what I would call the meaning of music. So the meaning of music are meanings, are feelings in music. So they're not just like prepositions, like in language, maybe. I would argue for the fact that even in language, we don't just express prepositions. The fact that, for example, the bus number 31 is coming from Jakominiplatz to the Resolvi building. No, I mean, we attach feelings even to this fact, to the bus and so on. And in music, this is much more enhanced, much more important to attach feelings, I mean, subjective feelings, to these sorts of structures and processes. And this is what makes up the subjective meaning of music. So this is what, if you are able to represent while performing these things, then the listeners are likely to believe that you understand what you are performing. So this is what I would like to argue for. And to return to Anna Rita's point about teaching, since the quality and the meaningfulness of a performance relies on the actual feelings I was talking about right now, in the act of performance, then it's quite evident, effective, very efficient music teaching focuses on cognitive processes producing these meanings, which make up real cognitive pedagogy. Because a structuralist type of pedagogy focuses on the end result. So generally, if you go to an average music class, what you get is something like play a bigger crescendo there, take more rest there, or take less rest, or play a bigger ritardando, and so on. This is what I call structuralist teaching. It is focusing on the end result, and it's not interested in the cognitive way how this is produced. And I see very many limitations of the everyday structuralist approach in teaching. Because if you, for example, what do you think about this, by the way? Could you argue for or against the structuralist approach? I'm trying to use the, I mean, since this is a workshop, so I'm asking you. So what do you think about it? So, are you for or against? For the structuralist approach, why it is good, and why it is, what sort of limitations?
Yeah, so I could argue that I'm definitely against the structuralist approach.
You are very much against, yes?
Yeah, from my personal experience as a piano student.
You're a pianist, yes?
Yes, so basically in my education I had different kinds of teachers, and each of them had different kinds of approaches. Some of them were more cognitive, some were more structuralist.
Mm-hmm.
And with cognitive teaching, I suppose I get much more information the quicker way. So if someone says, for example, play this like it's a bird flying, then I get this idea of how it looks like for me. And it's not telling me just about the dynamics, it's telling me about the articulation, about the tempo, about, you know, a number of features that, for example, if they said just play crescendo, would be, you know, two-dimensional, I guess.
Absolutely, yes, yes. Thank you very much. Yes, I agree with you very much.
I think one does not exclude the other, right?
Yes, no, they don't. They don't. Of course,
Yes.
they don't. No, no, they don't.
And I think in some cases, I'm not a professional. I'm very, very mediocre.
You're not a musician, you're not a musician, aren't you? Yes.
No, not at all.
You're a psychologist, yes.
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 so I think the structuralist, there's something more clear. And also, I think that sometimes maybe teachers, like when you understand the structure well, it will come out, you will feel it. You know? But I think most teachers, they combine the two.
Hopefully, yes. I mean, I would say that most teachers do combine them. However, the ratio is generally something like 90% structuralist and 10% cognitive. This is what I see generally when I'm assessing teachers, which I do very often actually. At least in Hungary, what I do. So yes, but yeah, basically most of them do a combination. But the question is, so what's the ratio of the two ways of teaching? Yes, absolutely. Do you want to add something?
Hello. I'll have to go, and I just have to say something and
yes, please do.
before I
yes,
leave,
yes,
because I have to catch the train. Well, I'm not a pianist, but I have I taught score reading, score playing.
Yes.
For a couple of years, and parallel with that, I taught music theory, I mean harmony, counterpoint, forms, and so on. And well, one does not go without the other.
Yes.
Well, cognitive approach gives really better and quicker results.
Yes.
But we should not be. We should be aware. One should be aware of the fact that the child does not know how to apply what he has cognitively grasped.
Right.
So introducing elements of musical signification where early stages of education are actually the way to help them decipher what they cognitively grasped in order to apply it. Because it's not just, okay, I see that and now I feel something and I'm expressing something. One has to know what to express. So one has to be aware both of the cause and of the consequence, and the structure is actually the tempo, the articulation, the agogics and so on should be the consequence of both cognitive and emotional parts, and children, okay, so I recognize this cognitively, but what to do with it?
Right, okay.
How, so the way from the cognitive fact to the expression has somehow to, must include structure and structuralist approach.
Yes.
And the final result as a sound.
Yes, so, I think I see your point. Thank you very much for this remark. I think I see your point. And yes, and I also think, based on experience, that you might be right, in fact. It's rather the question of the ratio of how much cognitive information, cognitive sort of information and structuralist sort of information you apply here. Actually, about cognitive, and I would like to reply to you a bit with my next slide, because, so just to return to what is a real cognitive teaching about? So how do you do a sort of a real cognitive way? How do you perform it? I mean, in order to focusing, in order to focus on the mental processes, the most important thing is to focus on the attention of the performer, the student, the child. So what is the child attending to while performing, and training the ability to attend to the right thing at the right moment when performing, in order to produce the right, the result, which is the desired result. So there are many there are many possibilities, many methodologies. And with this slide, I would like to draw your attention to a few methodologies based on, I mean, I'm trying to sell this to you a bit. I'm from Hungary, and we have a bunch of very interesting methodologies based on Kodai's pedagogical principles, which are basically, I mean, of course, he was not using the word cognitive, because at his time, I mean, the cognitivist approach was not in vogue, not so fashionable in Hungary. So it was in the 50s, 60s still. Of course, Chomsky was already quite famous at the time. However, he very much pointed to pedagogical approaches which we would call today cognitive, as desirable, and based on his ideas. He was talking about in the early 60s, late 50s, a few very interesting methodologies were developed in Hungary. And first of all, there are at least 4 methodologies which aim at training the attention, I mean children's attention through movement. The most interesting among them is the Kokosz methodology, developed by Klára Kokosz, one of the most ingenious pupils of Kodai himself, who devised a methodology of free-form movements. I mean, absolutely free movements to music, and through moving, by moving freely while listening to music, children are able to discover structures, and children are able to refine how to attend to music without any instructions. So you don't need any instructions. No, neither cognitive nor structuralist instructions. But they will be able to clearly, after a while, after a few sessions, to represent music for themselves. I mean, represent their subjective meaning, to make up their subjective meanings, even related to structure, quite clearly. We know that from interviews with children made after these sessions, or from their reactions to music, and from their enhanced attachment to musical stimuli, I mean to music. So that's the most interesting thing. And for example, there is the composer Kurtág's methodology, which is absolutely fascinating. So Kurtág devised a series of piano pieces for beginners, which is really about directly performing meanings in music. I was talking about gestures while talking about meanings, gestures and characters. For example, one of the first pieces in his piano school, called Plays and Games, is a piece called, entitled Homage à Tchaikovsky. And this piece goes like, we don't have a piano to show, but this piece goes like, you take your pawn and then pom, 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 pom. You do this, for example. So you hit the case like this. And it is, of course, mimicking the famous beginning of the B minor piano concerto. But what is here very interesting, that at the very first lesson, the 6-year-old child is able to perform the gestural content of this piece, hence the Tchaikovsky concerto. I mean, as well as Richter or Gilels. No words, I mean, really as well as a Gilels. And this is, I think, amazing, without any instructions, without any information about how the piano works, and so on. And it goes like that. And then the child will get more information about these, about how the piano works, and about even structural information, and so on. But but this is, I think, an eminent example, which works, by the way, really very well, and children love this piano school, according to experience, which aims at developing the ability to feel in real time very, very effectively, very efficiently. And alternatively, so we can do a direct training of attentional processes. And I would like to talk to you about my own methodology, which is one of such trainings. And I call this practice methodology, which is based on my theory of performance attentional strategies and processes, which was developed based on insights from sports psychology and pedagogical empirical results and pedagogical practice as well. So I posit that attentional strategies that underlie expressivity and the individuality in a performance constitute a very complex system, but a rule-based system, and it produces a specific mental imagery, which I call a navigating mental imagery. Because expressing musical meanings, I was talking about, in real time, so this is what the second child did very actively, in contrast to the first child, Ilan, in contrast to Magnus, you remember. And it results, so I argue for the fact that the second child had a very vivid musical imagery going on in his head while performing, which was related to his subjective meanings of the music. Maybe the first child had a very vivid imagery as well, but I would say that his imagery was not related to his understanding of the gestures, characters, or the structural issues in the Liszt piece. And most interestingly, the skill which is involved in this imagery is a sort of mental readiness to position into each of the three temporal perspectives. So this is the thing, I would say. At some point in the musical process, while performing, you are very actively anticipating what will come. Then there are moments when you are just enjoying the present moment. You are just enjoying the sounding of a chord, of a dissonance or a consonance. And at other very well-definable moments, you are actively recollecting, reflecting to what you played and how you played the previous units. And so these are well-definable points in a musical process where you are doing these things. And I would like to illustrate my point here with some recordings where you can see how it works really in very expressive performances. So at some point you form a clear cognitive and also affective, emotional map of the forthcoming structural units. Remember the first child. The anticipating movement you drew our attention to was clearly about something. He was anticipating, he was prefiguring something of the first phrase of the Liszt piece, or at least the first note, at least the temporal position of the very first note, the very first metrically stressed note. And then, at some point, towards the end of a phrase, you are actively recollecting. By the way, this is the very word Edmund Husserl used in a similar context to recollection. So if you are familiar with Edmund Husserl's phenomenology of time, I think he got really to the point. So you form a mental image of the preceding musical units, and then you ideally, if you are very expressive, you ideally measure the subsequent units to the previous one. So for example, if you did something unexpectedly in the previous phrase, you did something not as as it was anticipated, then you're able to adjust the subsequent phrase while performing interactive performance to your mistake. And this is what makes your performance, if you are able to produce this navigating mental imagery, your performance secure, or you will get a feeling of security while performing. And at some points, generally, in the middle of a phrase, you are fully enjoying the present sounding moment. So this is how it works. Basically, I enjoy the present moment. Then I set my future goals according to how I played the previous units. And to start in order to illustrate my point, I would like to show you two very short excerpts, 20-second excerpts from a masterclass with Maxim Vengerov, where he's teaching a Beethoven sonata movement. And here, you will see, oh my God, we don't need any more, the child. Oh, it's here, sorry. No. So this is the first, I hope at least. Yes.
That's it. That's it. Finished. Maybe even laugh.
Maybe like laugh, he says. Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't.
Very, very necessary to separate functions.
Yeah.
As if that's your role and that's another person. And then very necessary, you know? I mean, seems to be very easy sonata, but it's not. Because of these changes of personality. Please try, yeah?
Now take a look at her eyes, which reflect her attention. Is she able to do what Vengerov asks? But the two-bar phrases are very well separated in terms of gesture or character. It was okay. However, a few minutes after this is what happened. Just a moment. A few minutes after. Okay, so he did something. I mean, he was telling something to the girl, which resulted in this. I mean, I hope you could see the huge difference between the two excerpts in terms of attentional direction. I mean, her attention was. I mean, her mind was much quicker after something he said to her. I mean, these attentional shifts are absolutely, indispensable for example, expressing the narrative in a piece, because the narrative is the sort of a concatenation of gestures and characters, just as like in this Beethoven sonata movement. And in order to very expressively, express or communicate the narrative, you must be able to shift your attention very quickly. So a good teacher must be able to focus on this fact. I mean, on how to bring out from the student this very quick attention, these sorts of very quick attentional shifts. So this is just an introductory example of what I call a result of a cognitive teaching. ideally. Maybe you could bring out from the student even with the structural instructions, but I'm pretty sure that with structural instructions, it takes very, very, very much time, much more time than with cognitive, than in a cognitive way. We shall talk about that in a moment. So the anticipation, when we are focusing on the future, I would like to show you another excerpt from another masterclass with Vengerov, where he's teaching, where they are working on the first phrase, the first pair of beats in the solo melody of the G major Beethoven concerto. And Vengerov will use a very interesting metaphor in a moment.
Yeah, very good. Let's just work on the first two notes. The yampa. Martha, did you play basketball?
Basketball.
But you know how it works, yeah? So you throw the ball, and then until it reaches the basket, that's the time. That's the yam, and then tam. You see? And then you are running. Taram para dara daram. Okay? But that's the feeling, you know? Because the first yam. Exactly, yeah. That's nice.
So this is very interesting here. What is this? The throwing of the ball. This is a gesture, clearly. However, here the gesture is just a means to express. To let her figure out and let her express the difference between the stressed and the unstressed beat. And this is very much the difference of a portion of the metrical structure. So, this is an excellent example of cognitive teaching, for example. You use metaphors to guide your attention. And through a structural level description, a structural level instruction, it's very hard to bring out this from the student. Do you say to the student, okay, take the second note a bit later? Bring it a bit later. No, it won't really produce the same effect. Or bring both the first and the second note a bit later. It won't produce the same effect. So it's almost impossible through normal structural level instructions to bring this out from a student. And this is also an eminent example of anticipation. Through this metaphor of throwing the ball, Vengerov was almost forcing the student to anticipate instead of just playing duly. Right, let's go further to illustrate my points. So you can find this on YouTube if you type to YouTube Vengerov Masterclass Basketball, then you will find it. Vengerov Masterclass Mozart. So what happened here is that in the moment that preceded the beginning of the musical unit, its mental image appeared in her mind, in Marta. She's Marta the performer, Marta's mind. Because she was forced to do it, almost, through the metaphor. Being in the present. Let me show you another excerpt. This will be from a cello masterclass with Iserlis, where they are working, this will be very fine. It's a 25-second excerpt, and what will happen here is this. They are working on a melody, on a phrase, on a melodic phrase of the first Fantasiestück by Schumann. It sounds like, it sounds like this. I hope I'm in tune. I'm not sure I'm at the right pitch. So first you will see the student performing this, and then Iselis will stop her because he says that it's not enough expressive, and he will show first the student the expressive way. At the moment of the longest note of the phrase, this must be a D. Please try to find out what is happening in Iselis' mind, because you will be able to see his eyes very clearly, because the camera will be focusing on his face, on his facial gesture. And then Iselis will show the student the wrong version, how the student played it, and just after this, the student will play it again. And that will be very interesting. The student won't get the point. It's very, very interesting. So there will be many, many things happening in these 25 seconds of this excerpt.
After that.
It's questioning.
Okay, so in your color, question. The piano goes and you join in.
D. This was
so not a kind of...
Not like this.
Again, not solid, but not definite.
Okay, and she will play now.
Just some that.
Okay. Do you want to sit once again? Maybe. Yeah.
After that.
It's questioning.
Okay, so in your color, question. The piano goes and you join in. So not a kind of, again, not solid, but not definite, the color. Just some that.
Oh, sorry about it. How would you describe that moment in Iselis' performance? Instead of instead of that's a tiny little difference, but that's the difference what makes Iselis and the student just a student. This is just the only difference here. No technical things, nothing else, not anything else. It's just this which makes Stephen Iselis Stephen Iselis. Or Franz Helmerson, or István Várdai. How would you describe this moment? Did you see the difference? Did you see something strange? It's a tiny little thing. It's quite crucial.
Almost seemed like he a bit stopped the time.
Absolutely, he stopped the time a bit. Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
It's not the tempo change.
No, it's not.
It's tinier than that.
It's very strange. He sort of stopped the time, indeed. Yes, somehow. You could see in his eyes that it was like there was a moment when he just, almost fall asleep. Just for a fraction of a second, and that's really what produced the thing. If you say to a student to lengthen the note, it does not produce the same effect. When he just almost sort of fell asleep in that moment, in that D, just for a fourth of a second or a third of a second. It's just a few hundreds of milliseconds. Of course, it had as an effect the length. It lengthened the note, but it's not just about the mere lengthening of the note, which is here at stake. It's something else as well. This is a very fine thing. What I would argue for is that in such moments, you are in the present. You are really in the present. You lose yourself in the moment, and just for a fraction of a second, you observe it sounding. You enjoy it. you feel it deeply and you're absorbed in it. And you just have 300 or 400 milliseconds to do this. And that's the fantastic thing in music, I would say. And this, if you're able to produce these moments, then your performance is usually perceived by listeners as more expressive and more individual and more engaged as well. And finally, to show you the third basic, attentional direction, the direction of your attention towards the past in the act of the performance while performing, is the being in the past thing. When you are finishing a phrase, you very often, in order to be, if you want to be really expressive, you must be able to recollect on that phrase, actively recollect at the very end. So you recall the feeling of the length of the past unit, for example, in the very last note of that phrase. And I would like to illustrate this with another soloist excerpt. He's doing it very clearly in these demonstrations or master classes. So in this excerpt, he will coach Guy Johnston, the young English cellist, in Rachmaninoff Sonata. And they are working on an ending, on the ending of the first section of the sonata, of the slow introduction.
Why does it change? Why does it go into the wrong key? Or rather, let me put it another way, what effect does that have, going into the wrong key?
We're really far away from...
Almost in the wrong place. It's almost I think it's almost desperate. But you're not doing the menomosso.
It is not so important what they are talking about, so it might be even misleading. Just take a look at him, what he's doing. This is the first ending, this note, first phrase ending, and then there will be a shorter phrase, 2 more bars at the end of the slow introduction.
To the pianissimo.
And this is the ending note of the whole first page.
Into nothing, and then you get, then you deserve your cadence. But
and
you're
then
going...
and this is how you play it.
It sounds commonplace to me a little bit.
Were you able to see the difference? Here again. The difference between the two. At the end, he said that, but this is how you play it. And he did not do the active recollection, mental recollection in the last note. Were you able to see the difference? So there is this thing. You're recollecting a bit on the bit. Instead of this, if you are not doing this, it's like this. That's a difference, basically. And that was a difference between the student's performance and the soloist's performance again. Actually, this sort of mental recollection, which was, as I told you, already described by Edmund Husserl, actually, 100 years ago. He even took a musical example for this. Is very much akin to, it's very similar to being in the present. And when you are teaching, for example, when you are teaching children, you are able to get out this from children with very similar metaphors and images and instructions and cognitive instructions. There's one more thing I would like to talk to you about still, is that all these, so I was talking so far about moments where you are actively anticipating, where you're actively in the moment, in the present moment, or you are actively recollecting on the past. These moments are, as I already told you, these moments are moments of very deep and very focused attention, and your consciousness does change, indeed, in these moments, very little bit. It's like you consciously or unconsciously put yourself into trance for a fraction of a second, and then you get back to the thing. I mean, to the real or to the everyday performing situation, and then you go back and forth again. So this is what characterizes, I would say, a truly expressive performance. I mean, these shifts of attention while performing, and I coined this abbreviation MFI, a moment of focused immersion, to these moments. So this is the benchmark of an outstanding performer, the ability to produce these MFIs in order to be able to anticipate, be in the present, and recollect while performing. And the mental navigation I was talking to you about produces such short moments of intensive attentional immersion. And quick future and past directed MFIs are, through these very quick future and past directed MFIs, you are able to feel the structure of the music, the temporal structure of the music. Through the present focused MFIs, you are able to feel the temporal structure or process of a piece, and also the character, if you're able to extend a bit in time these short moments. And the quick attentional shifts I was illustrating through the first pair of excerpts from Wengerov's masterclass on Beethoven. Through these, you're able to express the narrative, dramatic structure of the music very, I mean, in an enhanced way, with a heightened expression. And then, maybe just to finish this my presentation, this workshop, I would like to show you my last excerpt, which is absolutely amazing excerpt. Alfred Cortot is performing a short Schumann piece at one of his masterclasses in the 50s. And within a very, very short time, within 5 or 10 seconds, he is able to get into very, very deep attentional immersion, a general, very deep general attentional immersion. However, within this very deep general attentional immersion, he's still immersing himself into certain moments which are, according to my theory presented here above, I would say.
Il me semble que le dernier morceau, Le poète parle, c'est là le titre que Schumann a lui-même ajouté à cette page immortelle, devrait être transposé sur un plan de rêverie plus intime, n'est-ce pas? Pas seulement la belle sonorité, la détente expressive de la phrase, mais un sentiment plus rêveur. La vérité est qu'il faut rêver ce dernier morceau, pas le jouer. Voulez-vous me permettre de prendre votre place? La même condition musicale. Et ici, comme une sorte d'interrogation.
Middle of a phrase, very deep attention immersion.
Tendrement.
Yeah, that's my last thing.
interroger l'avenir. Et à partir d'ici, que ça s'inscrive simplement, non pas dans la musique, mais vers un coup du génie
We have to stop
dans
now,
l'utilité.
but I invite you